I've been asked the past couple of days, what do I think about Julio Soler? And there's so much to really unpack in terms of what he can do, but at the same time, I know that he's not ready for prime time just yet. Now, my question, or not the question, the answer that I've had is basically that. I go and ask, hey, you know what? What are you looking for first and foremost? If you're looking for an immediate solution or a short to medium term solution, he's not it. When you look at what he's capable of doing, the tools are there. He can evolve and become this. He's just way too green. Now, that's not saying that Liverpool do indeed sign him. Liverpool bring him in, and possibly he starts getting some experience behind Andy Robertson. But then again, at the same time, you start analyzing that, and the only way you can actually get experience is by playing. So when do you play? Does that mean you'll go out on loan? Does that mean you end up playing Carabao Cup? Does that end up meaning that you're just a cup player? What ends up happening to Simikas? I mean, after all of that, Simikas hasn't been a player that has duly been effective and consistent, and a player that has been a protagonist or a contributor at least on a consistent basis whenever he steps onto the pitch. So with Soler, where does that leave him? We basically end up having a third string left back with a guy that ends up getting a lot of minutes in Robertson. I mean, Robertson's still young. He's 30. He'll be 31 by the end of this Premier League season. And then you start saying, okay, well, what about in 2-3 years' time? Now, if you're thinking 2-3-4 years' time, then Soler would probably end up being a good option. Although at 22, 23, looking down the road, with very little experience on the pitch, does that equal experience? If you kind of understand where I'm heading. Of course, going back to my original statement and saying, hey, the only way you can acquire experience is by playing. And if you don't play, but yet you're getting all this information, how much time does it take you to adapt? Is it going to take them a few years? It might take them a few years. It might take them a few days. Now, when answering a question such as that, you also have to have a lot of things, because the reference that many in England or in the UK have in terms of Argentine left backs is Valentin Barco. But Valentin Barco went from a club like Boca, where Valentin Barco in many moments of his time at Boca ended up being a huge part of the news cycle. And I always bring this up because when people talk about the pressures of the Premier League, well, no, I have to talk to you about the pressures of Boca as well, because Boca is the news cycle in Argentina, and Valentin Barco was accustomed to that. And he ended up kind of going into a situation at Brighton where the pressure eased off. And it's kind of crazy to say that, but Boca, going from Boca to many clubs in the Premier League, I'm not saying that Boca is a bigger club, I'm just saying situations. A club at Boca, which is basically, like I said before, the news cycle, he ends up going to Brighton, and the pressure does ease off somewhat. When Julio Soler is coming from Lanús, a very smaller neighborhood club in Argentina, going to Liverpool, that's a huge monumental step. I'm not saying it's not attainable. I'm not saying it's something that he can't kind of fit into in the long run, but it's something that he will need a lot of time to accommodate himself to. That's just plain and simple. I can't put it any other way. It's basically what ends up being in terms of this situation. So they're going to have to do a lot culturally, a lot from a football standpoint, a lot from an individual standpoint. A lot of growth has to occur during his time at Liverpool for that to occur. Barco somewhat had a bit of a transition into it. Barco was somewhat getting prepared at Boca for that eventual move, because many were already looking at him. Keep in mind, he was going to be part of that Olympic side. He was the one that was going to be playing at left back, but Brighton said, no, he's not going to the Olympics. So let's keep that in mind. So Soler again, can go for. I mean, yeah, I saw that he has some similarities to Andy Robertson. I didn't think about it in that way, but yeah, he does. He does to an extent. Now, he also has to learn certain composure as well. It's just one of those moments where you look at Soler, and the only thing you can say is he's green. He's very green. He's still very green. And he's 19. I mean, am I going to go say, no, he's not good enough? No, I can't say that, because then it would be completely unfair. He is good enough, or he can be good enough to play at a team like Liverpool. I don't know what's going to happen in the next year or two. Maybe he would need to take the jump somewhere else first and then go to Liverpool. Maybe he needs that. Maybe that would probably be a wiser option. Although, you know what? If I'm 19 and Liverpool want me, I'm going to try and make the move myself. Come on. I'm not going to kid you and lie to you and say, no, yeah, no. If Liverpool comes calling, Liverpool comes calling. And you better not miss that train. Now, what you do with that opportunity is completely up to you. Now, I sound a bit wishy-washy. I sound back and forth in terms of this because, in my opinion, you look at talent from South America now, 2024, and I don't see a player that can immediately jump into a situation and be a major contributor in Europe at a big European club. Now, can they go to a middle to bottom of the table Premier League side and have a somewhat immediate impact? Absolutely, I believe that. And of course, that'll be applicable for many other leagues in Europe. But you need a lot of these players nowadays to go to a Portugal, to go to Netherlands, to go to Belgium, to go to those leagues, to kind of understand and culturize themselves and acclimate themselves to a certain extent to what European football is all about. Maybe not so, you know what? I was about to say something and maybe it's not as fair, but if you kind of understand what I'm saying, maybe Soler needs to be in a position where he can transition into that player that they're thinking he can become. Needs to fill out his frame, needs to become a little bit stronger, needs to maybe have a little bit more presence. All of those things could help out. But if you talk to me about him being the direct competition of Andy Robertson, or being, Andy Robertson no longer is needed and you can bring him in. No. Barco was different because Barco ends up in a situation at Brighton where the team is just completely decimated. There's nobody else. And he was just the next player up. I mean, Igor gets injured, Estupiñán gets injured. They're making up things with a right back playing in the left. They're playing a center back as a left back. They're playing a right-footed center back as a left, because that's all there was at that point last season. So when you talk about Soler, it's a different situation. Now, if Liverpool go through one of those seasons like they did a couple of years ago where they just had no one, or last year when they basically had 11 players basically out, 11 starters basically out, then that's a different story. And that's what there is. There's nothing else, and he's going to have to try and learn to swim or learn how to tread water in the deepest part of the ocean. That's basically how it is. But if you're asking me right now about Julio Soler, he still has a long way to go to be worthy of being a starter at Liverpool. So that's just me. But again, that doesn't mean that he can't be a starter at Liverpool. I'm just saying that at 19, at this stage of his career, maybe in a year or two, I will put another video up and it's, he's the best left back in the world. Those things do happen. But as of right now, he's very far from even being close to a backup at Liverpool. Talk to you later.